Imagine you live in a country where you can vote, but only if you are rich. When the rulers promise self government but still hold the keys to every door. Where every law that touches your life, from salt to speech, must pass through a colonial filter. This was India in 1935. The British called it reform, Indians called it a chain, polished but still a chain. The Government of India Act 1935 was the empire's grand illusion, a gift wrapped in the language of freedom but tied with the knots of control. Was the Government of India Act 1935 a step towards freedom or just a better cage? Picture this, it is 1935. The British Empire is beginning to tremble. The Great Depression has shaken its purse, nationalist movements are boiling, and London knows it can't rule India with brute force forever. So it does what empires often do when cornered. It appears generous. It announces the Government of India Act 1935, the longest piece of legislation in the British history at that time. But behind the polite words and parliamentary pomp lay a deeper question. Was this really about giving power to Indians or about keeping control through new tricks of governance? Let's break it down. On paper, the Act created a Federation of India bringing together British provinces and princely states under one roof. Sounds democratic, right? But here is the catch. The princely states never joined. They did not want to lose their privileges. Without them, the Federation was just an empty shell, a plan without a heartbeat. The British knew this, of course. They designed it so that even if the provinces got restless, the princes loyal to the crown could balance them out. Divide and rule, now written into constitutional law. The act promised provincial autonomy, a phrase that thrilled many Indian leaders. For the first time, provinces like Bengal, Bombay, and Madras could form ministries responsible to elected legislatures. The British Viceroy could no longer interfere, at least not openly. But wait, he still had special responsibilities and discretionary powers, meaning he could overrule any decision if it threatened British interests. So, yes, Indians could drive the car, but the British kept the brakes. You might remember dyarchy, the system introduced in 1919, where some subjects were handled by Indians and others by the British. It had failed miserably at the provincial level. So in 1935, the British moved it up to the central level. Now, even at the top, the Viceroy and his council retained control over defense, foreign affairs, and communications. In short, the empire kept the keys to the army, diplomacy, and the post office. Everything else, Indians could debate about it endlessly. Here is another irony. The Act expanded voting rights to about 10% of the population, around 35 million people. That was progress compared to 1919. But 90% of Indians, farmers, women, the poor, were still outside the gates of democracy. It was like calling a few privileged men into the palace and saying, "See, you are free now." Even more powerful than politicians were the civil servants, the famous steel frame of the Raj. The Act entrenched their autonomy. The Indian civil service was insulated from local interference. No matter who got elected, the real missionary stayed British, polished, loyal, and unaccountable. And yet, paradoxically, this half freedom stirred the hunger for full freedom. When Indian leaders like Nehru and Patel ran ministries under this act after 1937 elections, they saw firsthand how limited their power was. That experience became the moral and political training ground for the real constitution of 1950. Sometimes the road to liberation begins inside the illusion of it. This act teaches a timeless truth about power. Reform without responsibility is manipulation. The British did not share power, they managed it to buy time, to fragment opposition, to pretend progress. So, yes, the act failed as a constitution, but it succeeded as a rehearsal. Many of its features, the federal structure, provincial list, and even the idea of a strong center were later absorbed into the independent India's constitution. History has a strange sense of humor. What began as a colonial compromise became a democratic blueprint. And maybe that's the deeper irony. The empire built the scaffolding of every house that would one day replace it.